4 Minutes of Heaven, we call the D1Baseball.com podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Happy Monday. Our podcast is brought to you by our new sponsors at S2 Cognition. Really cool learning about this new company. S2 Cognition is the leading sports science cognitive tech platform, gives players visibility to how their brain is wired to make split-second decisions at game speed. S2 works with teams and coaches to administer the digital S2 eval that measures a player's millisecond reaction, such as their ability to swing on time and make contact, level of self-control to not chase pitches. That would have been helpful 30 years ago. Anticipation of pitch location to swing at the right spot, and more. The results are detailed in a personalized S2 score report, giving athletes and teams insight on how to practice more efficiently to get better and get better faster. This report is also being used for drafting and recruiting purposes across the NCAA, which of course it is. This is so on brand for what's going on in sports today, where athletes really can understand themselves so much better. And, you don't have to guess at what your strengths are. You can actually learn about them. So gotta love it. I am joined by the crew, as always, the great Aaron J. Fitt. Fitzy, how are you?
I am smashing runes. How are you?
I'm good, except for my computer is...
I'm doing pretty good. I'm disappointed your computer is wigging out. You look beautiful frozen, though.
Did I just had a freeze? I was kind of curious. I had a black screen for a second there. That was not awesome or encouraging. Apparently, my computer did not love my S2 Cognition read, but we seem to be better now. Holy heck! What's going on here?
No, it is better. I have two things real quick. The first,
Yes.
I do want to give props to our fans. We've reached the 1,000 mark on YouTube. I know Rooney has been stressing that, so we're finally there. So let's give our fans a hand. The other is I want a very quick, we're all about 45 minutes of heaven. I want the 1 minute of heaven report on the Rune's ordained wedding.
Well, one of the reasons I was late for our scheduled podcast time is because I forgot to sign the license. And thankfully...
You had one job, Runes.
Well, I think there's more than one job to be an officiant, but that was a critical part of said job. And luckily, the couple's honeymooning in Sedona, Arizona, so I was able to meet them at a rest stop and get it signed. The one, we did well. They're married. That's the only thing that counts. Just win.
Everybody showed up, so that's a positive.
Everybody showed up, and at one point, the bride said the phrase "sit down" to me in the beginning of the ceremony when anxiety was pretty high, and I was like, oh boy, this does not feel like a good command. I thought she was very nervous, so I thought she wanted to sit down, and I was basically saying, you actually are not allowed to sit down. That is not on my play sheet. What she meant was you can tell the crowd to sit down. Everybody was still standing 5 minutes in. So anyway, there you have it. It was great. Thank you for asking. They are married. It was fun. It's all good in the hood. So there you go.
Good job, Runes.
Thank you. Hey, by the way, boys, I listened to the beginning of the weekend preview show last Thursday. And Fitzy, you referenced Lunenburg Little League. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Lunenburg, Mass.
I like it. Kendall, you did not reciprocate. What was the local Little League for Team Rogers growing up?
It would have been just Lufkin Little League, or like
Lufkin
City League.
I like it.
Actually, back then it was Lufkin Dixie League, but I don't think we can say that anymore.
So you guys didn't have the traditional Little League setup.
No, it was like they were in like a Dixie League, and it was interesting.
I like that. The Newtown Edgemont Little League obviously getting a lot of play, and I'm grateful for that. I have a question for you guys. So somebody on Twitter had apparently our top 10 rankings are all teams with orange in them, or there's a preponderance of those types of teams. So here's which is kind of cool. I'm down for orange. Here's my question, because it also draws me back to Newtown Edgemont. If you guys could draw up a uniform, what is your favorite color combination? And it could be just your favorite uniform. Now, I am, like the Malvern Prep Fighting Friars had a really cool navy and silver. We were kind of bootlegging the Raiders, Oakland Raiders. We had silver helmets and navy tops and silver pants. Those were pretty cool. Newtown Edgemont Little League, a very classy, green and gold, which I liked very much. Fitzy, let's go with you. What is a color combo you like?
I think UCLA's uniforms are really classy with the that kind of baby blue and yellow playing off each other, and with the cream especially. I just think that's a really good look. I'm in on that.
Yeah, UCLA, very strong. And I love like the cursive scripts, letters, I'm always down for.
Yeah.
KR, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm always accused of being biased towards the West Coast, so I'm going to go with actually UCSB. I thought, what was it? Was it the Super Regional? The uniform they wore, the gold jersey with the blue like script.
They have one of those.
That bright gold. That just looked
kind of
really
yellow,
good to
actually.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the yellow, gold, and royal blue. I also love like all of the old school Arizona State throwbacks are awesome. Like
Arizona
garnet and
State has
gold looks
great
great
unis.
too. The Arizona State garnet and gold, not the Florida State garnet and gold.
I have to say, like the historic brands in college baseball, and I don't know whether that's because what I grew up on or what, but some of those uniforms like Miami, Mississippi State, Texas's uniforms back then, Oklahoma State. I love Oklahoma State's old school uniforms. You mentioned Arizona State. I'm going to be critical of USC. They're a historic brand where their uniforms have always just been kind of meh for me.
Not on it. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, they were wearing like the drop shadows back in the mid '90s. If you remember.
Yeah, those were bad. Those were no better than the 30s. There's a comment on here. Tulane has some great uniforms.
Great unis.
The cream jersey with the green numbers are awesome, but also I really like their. I think it's their Sunday unis. With that kind of the light blue with the the Cardinals-esque birds on the bat thing going with the green. I think the light blue and the green is really sharp. I guess I like that light blue color.
Yeah, I think.
Can I add one to the discussion here?
Look at you, Carrie. That's a good one.
That's pretty classic.
Miami's got good uniforms. Sometimes I think they kind of outthink themselves. They get cute, to use your phrase, Fitzy. I think when Miami just stays with their standard classic uniforms with that Old English M, they can't go wrong.
Good call.
But
they have a new jersey now. They wore was it at Duke a couple weeks ago? They wore like a new jersey. It was black. It was kind of interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. I see that's overcooking it for me for Miami. Just stick with your green and your orange. Those are classic.
You know who's like the USC of the East Coast in terms of just having like very blah uniforms to me is Florida. Like if you think back to like even the early 2000s, like they've always just had very just kind of blah jerseys.
The font, the font is so key, and I think their font is below average. I would agree with you.
I did like it when they had the Gators and the cursive font. I thought that was their best boat, and then they've gone away from that. I don't recall last time I've even seen that. So
yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, thanks for tuning in to Uni Watch. We'll see you next week.
You know what? What's funny? What's funny is this right here will create more discussion than anything else we'll talk about. So
you're probably right.
Yes. Hey, so okay, I've got a segue, a transition, if you will, coming. But let me put a bow on this. So Clinton Yates, who is this guy looks the part. He's a sharp dressed man. He is the ultimate uniform police, and he gives college baseball high grades in the area of uniform. So I take that as a tremendous compliment for our sport. Like Clinton is all in. He's a big baseball guy, even though he's a journalist of all sports. And he's all in on the college baseball, like the alternate unis. And that is a cool thing. Like we, as a sport, we're not beholden to just stay stagnant traditions. People get a little crazy with uniforms. I dig it.
I'm not so gung-ho on the all red Rutgers jerseys though.
Those are bad, but they have all blacks that are cool, actually.
Yeah,
but they're all red. That was an over.
Oklahoma State wore a jersey on Saturday that I thought like it was pinstripes and it was white and it kind of had like this Western Cowboys font on it, and like I think they were kind of going with like a new/throwback look. But like Oklahoma State's total like uniform, I guess in soccer they call it the kit, right? Their whole uniform kit for Oklahoma State's fantastic now.
Yeah, they have good unis.
We can move on.
Okay, so here's my transition. One of the fun I was thinking about today, what do we want to talk about? And one of the fun themes in this season, I really don't want to talk about teams, even though we do. We will because I don't know what to say. I'm so confused with college baseball outside of one team, maybe 1.5 teams. We'll get to that. But we have some cool player stories going on this year. Like last year, Rocker and Leiter were like so fun. We know they're big leaguers, etc. This year, the guys that are really fun aren't all like locks to be big leaguers. Like, okay, let's start with Sonny DiChiara. He's leading the country in every offensive stat, though, those triple slash categories. He's leading in batting average. He's leading in on base percentage. He's leading in slugging percentage. It's outrageous. And where I wanted to tie that in, Fitzy, is Stephen Kwan. Did I see this right? He had 5 hits in his major league debut, or just one of the first couple games?
I think it was his 3rd game, and then there was I guess he had another great game today, I believe. I mean, he set some kind of record for like most times on base in his first 20 plate appearances or something like that. And also I think I saw this today. He's yet to swing and miss in his first like 5 games or something. Anyway, it's like, talk about elite bat to ball contact skills. It's pretty cool.
If there's an all fit Hall of Fame, is he the first plaque?
Oh, I mean, it's
him or Tony Kemp.
It's probably Tony Kemp. Tony
Right.
Kemp and Kwani would be like probably the first 2 guys in. There's a question in the chat here. Who's the best fit-sized pitcher? I mean, Marcus Stroman. He's a little more jacked than me, but he's about the same height. He would be a first ballot all fit team guy. Sonny Gray. In today's game, I was trying to think of who it would be in today's game. I guess Carter Holton is kind of that sort of a build. He's again a little bigger than me. I'm not going to insult him by calling him fit sized, but I love I love the little guys, and there's some good ones out there.
I love it. KR, give me one of your favorite players from this year so far. Give me a guy that you've really enjoyed.
Well, you've already talked about Sonny D. I mean, who doesn't love Sonny D? The guy's the best.
That's amazing.
I would just say, in terms of like guys that have taken a huge step forward that maybe you weren't expecting, Murphy Staley in Texas. I mean,
love that
this
story.
was a guy that was okay last year, but he had an awesome fall, and you know how it goes with fall ball. Like, you see some guys, and they get in the spring and they don't emulate anything they did in the fall. Well, this is a guy that not only has emulated what he did in the fall, but has gotten even better. And so, I was talking to Scout the other day, and it was kind of interesting. It was a national cross checker, and we were talking about Murphy Staley, and I'm like, how do you grade out a guy like that who may not be the best prospect in the world, but he's got he's got the stats, and he's got all the numbers to back it up on the college level. And he's like, that's a great question. Like, nobody really knows like what to do with him right now from a prospect standpoint. So I just think it's cool. It kind of goes back to what you said about, like, it doesn't have to be an elite prospect. Like, nobody really knows what Murphy Staley is as a prospect, but the guy's hitting like 450 for one of the best teams in the country.
And I bet you, I could be wrong about this, but I think if we went back to Texas's preview in the preseason, he may or may not have been listed as a starter. I mean, maybe he was, but maybe
it was either him or Dylan Campbell were listed as the starting DH. But like, there's some great story. I mean, hey, there's some great stories out there that are a lot like him. Like, for instance, I'll be very honest with you. Like, before the spring, like, I wasn't real sure who the hell Jack Hurley was. But like, he hit 250 last year for the Hokies. He's hitting like, I don't know, 430 with like double-digit bombs now. So like, he's another guy.
I'll be very honest with you. You need to read your Aaron Fitt fall reports. We've been writing about Jack Hurley 2 straight falls. We've been on this guy. He's tooled up. He's got speed. He's got bat speed. He's got a sweet swing, athleticism, power. He's a 5-tool guy, and it just didn't figure it out his first year, but he sure has figured it out his second year. What a season for the Hokies.
Yeah, it's awesome. How about let me throw some other names at you guys, and then this will transition us to Miami and Virginia. You mentioned Murphy Staley. That's right. That was perfect. Jake Geloff is, he's cooled off, but I mean, like last year, Jake Geloff was Zach Geloff's younger brother, and we hope he's half the player Zach is. Now he's, an All-American. Tommy White is, just he's Bob Horner, Pete Incaviglia, kind of the oversized kid, not a great body. He's having a great year. I'm going to put Carson Palmquist in here, guys. Like, most pitchers don't want to drop their arm slot. They don't. They don't like to do that. And here's this kid doing this, and he looks like a future big leaguer easily. Connor Noland, I wrote about last week. It's one of my favorite stories. He's been okay. He's really been downtrending for 3 years, and now this year he's been incredible on Friday nights for Arkansas. Travis Bazzana, I wrote down, the Australian player. So here's where I'm going to transition us to Miami. So I'm trying to figure out Miami. And I called the game where Boston College bombed Carson Palmquist that first game. They had 9 earned runs against Carson Palmquist. 9 earned runs.
Mm.
Boston College, I think, is clearly the worst team in the ACC right now. Them
Yes.
or Duke right now. So that's another question I have for you guys for later, but I can't unsee that. I really can't unsee that. I'm really struggling to be clear-headed about Miami. But 2 players that really jump out for me on Miami are also not the perfect prospects. CJ Kafis, Dominic Patelli are playing great for those guys. So let me transition you guys to this. Miami obviously sweeps Virginia. I would love some takeaways from that series because, man, I did not see that coming.
Our man Walter, the great Walt V, he had a fantastic piece on Friday, 11 reasons why Miami has won 11 straight. And he really he went in depth on what's worked for them and the various levers that they've pulled that have just clicked into place. And I think a key part of it is having Andrew Walters at the back of the bullpen gave them the peace of mind to move Palmquist into that rotation. And Walters has been the best closer of the country. I mean, his numbers are bonkers. I think it was, at least as of Friday, he had a 0 ERA in 17 innings. He only gave up 3 hits, Runes, 2 singles and 1 double, 2 walks, 32 strikeouts. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd, to have a guy like that at the back of your bullpen. But you mentioned Patelli. I mean, we knew Patelli could defend. That's why he was in the lineup. He's a defense first, rugrat middle infielder, but he's slugging. Like, he's actually driving the ball this year. Nobody saw that coming. Walt referred to him as Dominic El Bambino Patelli.
Great.
With an OPS over 900, 6 home runs. I mean, tied for the team lead. Like, who saw that coming? Sometimes you just need to have some of those kinds of stories. And then the other key thing that he had in there, and there's a lot of key things. It's a great piece. If you're a Miami fan, please go back and read this. It was posted on Friday. It talked about Alejandro Rosario, and we talked about this, I think, on the podcast last week, maybe. But this guy came out with an ERA in the 12s his first couple weeks of the season. Just totally lost his confidence. And Gino DeMarais said, hey, we got to get this guy going. And their pitching coach, Eddie Ardiago, is just like, I said, there's nothing to fix. I mean, the stuff is great. Like it's nothing wrong. It's just like he kind of lost his confidence. And so they built him back up, and he's turned in a few, really good starts in a row now. And to have that guy as maybe a third guy, behind Palmquist and then Carson Ligon, the freshman, who's been awesome for him. That's a great rotation. So, I mean, I think it's an elite pitching staff, and I think the lineup has developed into being much better than we all thought it would be.
Yep. KR, you could feel free to comment on Miami, but I'm gonna ask you something. Do you think this actually helps the ACC that now because I think you still have to recognize that Virginia's had a heck of a season, but do you think this helps the league to have 2 kind of air quote elite teams?
It definitely does. Well, I'll go back to Miami in a second, but it definitely does. I mean, I think the 3 of us would all agree that we feel more confident in like the ACC top to bottom right now than we do the SEC. Like I like teams like, Wake that aren't ranked right now, or even NC State better than I like A&M or like Mississippi State right now. So
and North Carolina, I'd put in that class too, and Florida State for that matter.
Yeah, Florida State. I mean, we take Parker Mesk and Bryce Hubbard over any of those bottom tier SEC teams. So I like the depth of the ACC. Now we're starting to see some elite teams kind of come out of the ACC with Virginia and Miami, Notre Dame. You got to throw Notre Dame in the equation. I mean, John Michael Bertrand's been phenomenal. That the biggest question mark from your standpoint was their pitching, and their pitching as of late has been really good. John Michael Bertrand has continued to be dominant. Austin Temple was really good over the weekend. So you have to kind of group those 3 teams together. Louisville swept Notre Dame. So I don't feel that confident about Louisville's pitching. I think it was just kind of a bad weekend for Notre Dame, but they are a team that has a pretty good resume. So you have to kind of throw them back into the mix. So you've got 4 teams right now that I feel like at least have elite potential. But, real quick on Miami, kind of going back to them real quick, another guy I was going to mention was Jacob Burke. I mean, this was a kid. We talk about, Sonny D going from the SoCon to the SEC. Here you have Jacob Burke, who had power production last year from Matt Reiser in Southeastern Louisiana. But, he had an OBP well under 400. He hit 250 for the year. And what is he doing at Miami? He's got an OBP well over 400. He's hitting with power. He's got 10 less RBIs than he did the whole season last year for the Lions. And, oh, by the way, he's hitting 336. So yet another example of a guy kind of moving up the ladder competition-wise and his production actually taking off.
Yeah, he stands out when you watch Miami. Thomas
Really
DiMartini,
athletic.
by the way, your son can really hit. I like your son very much, if that's your son or your brother. But you can't say we leave them out because they're ranked 21st this week. Let's go. Virginia Tech emerged from that food fight, but they are. I think we've commented in the past, and certainly I believe this. Virginia Tech is really, really interesting. That they're another one of those teams in the ACC. Let's transition to the SEC for a second, because here's a thought I had on the SEC. There are a lot of teams that are playing like zombies in that league right now. Just look lost. But two of those teams are not Alabama and Auburn. And if you lined up the rosters, Alabama, Auburn versus Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Vandy are three that are top of mind for me. I'm not selecting, and this is no offense to those players, I'm not selecting the Auburn or Alabama rosters. I'm just not. I still like those other rosters better. But you know what I love about Alabama and Auburn? Man, they play with life. I mean, they just got fight. They're just trading punches. I love it. And it's so cool that they are beating teams that, have quote unquote better rosters by just playing hard and being game. And hey, Auburn coming off a really tough year. Alabama's taken some gut punches this year, but they keep coming back for more, and now they're being rewarded. I'll just intro it that way, boys. I love those two teams.
Well, the thing about Alabama, and it's kind of weird to say this, but I was talking to Brad Bohannon a few weeks ago after they played the Texas series, and if you remember, the weather was bad in that series in Austin, but I want to say they lost all three games by either a run or two runs, and they had a chance to not only win that series, they had a chance to sweep it. They ended up getting swept, but they had a chance to sweep that series. Like, they had plenty of chances to score runs. They could have won that series, and I really think that if you're Alabama, in a weird way, like your takeaway from that was like, hey, we could have easily won a series with the number one team in the country. And I think as you go kind of past that series a few weeks to the Florida series, they lose the first two games. But what happened in the final game, they kind of battled back, clawed their way, fought their way to a win. And ever since that point, they've played with a lot of confidence. So I'm really impressed at just how hard-nosed it is, because you're right. I mean, this is a team that last year, frankly, probably shouldn't have been in the postseason. They got in the postseason because they clawed their way to a few wins in the SEC tournament. So I give that coaching staff a lot of credit. They've had a lot of setbacks, and it'd be really easy to kind of just throw in the towel a little bit. But, man, they're very persistent.
Yeah, and I was at that Sunday game against Florida, and they were in trouble. Like, they had the lead most of the game, and then they blew it. Florida surged ahead, and it's like they could have very easily been ejected at that point, and they just kept on fighting. I mean, really, like Rooney said, they were kind of snake bit. I mean, they had a bunch of close games that they just didn't come out on the right end of, but they just, really so impressed with the heart that they've shown, and they've got just enough arms. I mean, it's not not a deep pitching staff, but like they've got six to eight guys that I feel pretty good about. I mean, guys with stuff and guys that attack you, and the lineup. I mean, Brad even said, like, we're not an elite offense, but we're solid, and that's right. I mean, they've got some nice experienced pieces, and they've got a nice little kind of blend of some power and some bat control guys and some speed. It's just kind of a rock solid team, I think. I mean, and Auburn, it's a little similar offensively. It's like they've got some guys that have been around a while now, and that definitely matters. And then, of course, you throw in a Sonny D and a Blake Rambush, who's really been the igniter for that team. The guy that he's awesome. The guy that makes them go. There's a Fitt size guy
that's right.
Just a little more athletic than me, but he is awesome. He's so
I'd
fun
have to
to
see
watch.
it to believe it.
Yeah, I know you would.
He has two less hole-in-ones than you, though.
Probably.
Go
ahead.
No, I was going to say the other thing about Auburn too is, like, from a pitching standpoint, is you have Hayden Mullins on the front end. Joe Gonzalez yesterday, throws a complete game against Vanderbilt to win that series. And, oh, by the way, on the back end, they got Blake Burkhalter up to 94, 95 with kind of that nasty kind of upper 80s cutter. So they've got they've got like multiple solid weekend guys to go with a true kind of shut down bullpen guy on the back end. And that's a good recipe when you consider, that lineup of Rambush and Deshara and guys like that.
It's so fun because I feel like pitchability is making a little bit of a comeback, and I'm just down for it. And certainly, like you said, KR, like you get your Burkholders of the world that are still throwing a million, and those guys are so effective in bullpen roles. But
Gonzalez is like a classic sinker guy who gets a ton of ground ball outs, and and you're right. I like your point here, Rooney. It's about pitchability making a comeback, because I just saw this weekend Southern Miss at Charlotte, and the first two guys in that rotation, Tanner Hall and Hunter Riggins, they're both they're sinker guys. They get a ton of ground ball outs, just a heavy fastball. You're not going to blow you away, kind of like 87 and 91, maybe 88, 91 for Riggins. I mean, but both have really good changeup, so they can throw right on right or against lefties. Riggins can really spin two different breaking balls. And then you come in with, Hurston Waldrop on Sunday, who's a first rounder next year, just, throwing gas. But like the reason that team is so good is because there's a lot of reasons. I think they're a really good club, just balanced, complete club. But those pitchability guys in Friday and Saturday, I mean, if you can play defense behind those guys, and Southern Miss does. I love Dustin Dickerson and Danny Lynch on the left side of the infield. I mean, those guys are fun to watch. They make a lot of plays. That's a recipe for success.
Yeah. God, it's so interesting. I was going to ask you guys about that. Like last week, we were talking about Conference USA had 7, really interesting teams, and they still do. I'm not, 1 week doesn't make them not interesting anymore. But all of a sudden, Louisiana Tech and Southern Miss are starting to slip away, and that can change. But I feel like you guys have good command of those two clubs. I mean, let's put it in comparison to like Louisiana Tech last year, who hosted a regional. Does this year's Southern Miss team and this year's Louisiana Tech feel like that, or maybe even a tick better? What do they feel like to you guys?
I think Louisiana Tech and Southern Miss are similar. I would argue that Louisiana Tech last year was more offensive. Yeah. I think Southern Miss's rotation this year is a little bit more star power. Because, like, if you look back at last year with Louisiana Tech's rotation, like Jarrett Wharf and Ryan Jennings, they were solid. Jonathan Fincher, was a Friday guy that was kind of a thumbing lefty who was a converted reliever, and like he was really good, but like he didn't have real stuff. Whereas like Southern Miss, like you could argue they have one of the best Sunday starters in the country in Hurston Waldrop, who's up to 97. So I would say Southern Miss, for me, their starting pitching has a little bit more kind of a wow factor. Whereas like it's really hard to beat that lineup that La Tech had last year with all those veterans. Still Netterville, Taylor Young, who was I'm drawing a blank. Hunter Wells. They were just loaded.
But of course, Netterville and Young are still there. Yeah,
they're so old. Those teams, so great.
It's awesome.
Corey Corona.
Yeah, there's so much experience in the lineup for both those teams. And the same is true for Southern Miss. I mean, I feel like Danny Lynch and was it Will McGillis and like the Count.
Mm-hmm.
These guys have been around forever. The Count needs to get going. Like he actually got hurt, and so like when he was out, they moved Carson Pato into leadoff spot, and now the Count. We're talking about Gabe Montenegro here. He the Count of Montenegro, if you will. He's sitting down toward the bottom part of the lineup, and and they're fine. But like this Carson Pato guy and Slade Wilkes, this has been maybe the biggest.
Slade Wilkes, big name.
There's a lot of keys for Southern Miss, but these two sophomore guys taking a jump in their second year, super talented, tooled up, physical looking dudes. They looked the part and they performed. I mean, and Wilkes is hitting for power. He had another home run for me this weekend. He always hits home runs when I'm there. But Pato he's been the leadoff guy. He hits for power. He's a like true right field profile. He's got a plus arm. That guy could be a high draft pick too next year. Like he's a really exciting talent.
I'm kind of curious, like having seen them in person, like where's your confidence meter on that being an Omaha team?
I think
1 through 10, 10 being like no doubt.
I mean, I think they're I'll put a 7 on it. I think they're an Omaha team. I really do. Yeah. I think like, in fact, I answered in the chat today. Somebody asked who you rate for Omaha right now, and I had them in my 8. I think they're very good.
They're a team like Georgia for me that I'm always encouraged. Always is this is the wrong word, but it's encouraging when I think about Georgia. We ranked them in the preseason because they're pitching. They've taken on a ton of injuries, getting a little bit healthier, but their offense is carrying the day. And Southern Miss is the same thing. I went back and reread the preseason questionnaire on Southern Miss, and the emphasis was 100% on, hey, 8 of 9 position players back. We haven't had that kind of returning group in a long time. And those guys have been great, but it's the pitching that are getting the headlines for Southern Miss.
So, yeah, Christian Ostrander has done a great job. I
Yes.
mean, if you look at that program a few years ago, and I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but they had that year where Kurt McCarty was like really, really good for them. But outside of that, they were pretty lean in the weekend rotation. But I mean, if you look at like the year since Ostrander got there, like their pitching's been pretty solid every single year.
And he told me this weekend this is the deepest pitching staff he's had. And he said, I'm not going to necessarily say as a staff because last year, you had Stanley and Powell.
Yeah.
You had 2 dudes there, but they managed, and they definitely have more depth. I mean, like he's got arms, on that staff with real stuff, like an Aubrey Gillentine or a Blake Wehan, and those guys are just like struggling to get innings because, they're just so deep. So it's a really good club.
I love it. Hey, let's go out west for a second. So, man, the Pac-12, I love saying this every time. They're having a conference tournament this year. Heck, yes. In Scottsdale, it's going to be hot. It's still going to be awesome. So there's no bad time of the year to be in Scottsdale. It's a super fun place, super fun town. But the Pac-12 is very, very interesting. Stanford is really when I was driving back and forth from Palm Desert to the wedding, I was listening to games on the radio. And I listened to Stanford ASU. I listened to Alabama Ole Miss. I listened to the Thursday night game, Arkansas, Florida, which was really fun. But the ASU announcers kept commenting about the Stanford offense was overwhelmingly good. They were not impressed with the pitching outside of Alex Williams. And, you have to take that. It's an opposing broadcast crew, although Tim Healy is the greatest. But, and then Oregon State is, still continues to win games. Cooper Jerpy it just keeps improving, which is awesome. Arizona, really bad series loss to Washington State. What's your guys' takeaway from hey, Oregon, to your reporting today, KR? They're getting a little kind of give and take on the injury front, but getting a little bit healthier, getting Drew Cowley back in the lineup. What's your guys' take on the Pac-12? We're kind of we're still bobbing and weaving, or are you starting to get some clarity there?
Yeah, I mean, Oregon's had some good and bad news. I mean, obviously losing Adam Mayer is not optimal. I mean, I think they kind of expected that. But they get Drew Cowley back here in the next week or two. And Mark Wasikowski's also excited about getting Jay Stoffel back. He said he's a really nice kind of weekend type of arm that's supposed to be back, I think, this coming weekend. So I actually feel pretty good about Oregon. That's a really offensive club. Brennan Malone continues to rake for them. Stanford, it seems like they're starting to kind of regain its footing a little bit, from that kind of that little lull there after the Round Rock tournament. UCLA, the thing about UCLA that's really interesting to me, guys. We can kind of talk about those guys, talk about the Bruins, but the thing that's going to be interesting to me with UCLA is, right now, like Alonzo Treadwell's, I think, is on the shelf. Jared Karros continues to be on the shelf. Thatcher Hurd's likely out for the year. You just kind of wonder, like, they're not an ultra offensive team. You just kind of wonder, like, at some point, are those injuries going to catch up with a team like UCLA, who's all of a sudden kind of thrown a lot of pressure on a guy like Jake Brooks, who until now has pitched very well.
Fitzy, what are you thinking there?
It feels to me like we've got separation between the top 5 and the rest of the league. And that's where the clarity is. Oregon State, UCLA, Arizona, Stanford, Oregon. Those are 5 regional teams who are all, I think, going to battle for the conference title and hosting position, and everybody else won't. I mean, it's and so it feels like there's a lot of wins to be had. If those 5 teams can continue to take care of business against the other 6, there's an opportunity there for this league to have one of those situations where maybe you get like 5 teams in and 4 of them host. Like I could see that happening because there's just a big gap. I think there's just a else. But as far as which of those 5 are the best, I mean, I still think it's Oregon State. They keep on winning despite not having 2 of the 3 weekend starters we were so excited about. I mean, 2 of those guys have been out all year, but how about this AJ Lattery stepping in now? Well, 5 innings, 1-run ball at USC. It's the first time USC's ever been swept by Oregon State in LA, by the way, which, for whatever that's worth, just thought that was a nugget. But what do you got on AJ Lattery, Runes?
Yeah, I didn't get to see him when I saw Oregon State. If I saw him, it was like a quick inning of relief. They were still kind of low on pitch counts, but I will say this: like losing Will Frisch and Jake Fennings is, like we were their kind of resume cover was best rotation on the West Coast, so they don't have that. But Jacob Kamatz has been really good for a freshman as far as just holding his own. They've got some depth, and I think that's what Oregon State's advantage in the pitching staff is going to be. I don't feel like they've got 6 or 7 guys you can lock in for 13, 14 weeks, but they've been able to mix and match and just keep people fresh. You know what it kind of reminds me of is what our man Coach Nate Yeskie did at Arizona last year, where you just kind of keep people's head above water. You don't necessarily have 4 dominant guys. But yeah, Oregon State, gun to my head, Oregon State still feels like the team I like the most.
Oregon State, by the way, guys, did not have a single walk over the weekend in that series.
That'll do it.
Wow.
That'll do it. By the way, Runes.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, Oregon State, it's a new coaching staff, so that's always, I feel like I'm still getting used to Mitch Canham and his staff. Rich Dorman, we've known from, when he was at Grand Canyon. But I feel like Oregon State going to a regional final last year really helped them. I felt like that was that's when it became like, okay, this is Mitch Canham's program now. Hey, I'm not just kind of taking over for the guy who coached me. That's enough of a gut punch to kind of get you upright in your seat. I don't know. I like the vibe.
And they played well.
Oregon State. Yes,
they played well in that regional.
After not playing well down the stretch, by the way, they almost kicked their regional down the road. Remember they finished. They had to win on the last day of the season to finish 16-14 in the Pac-12. I don't know that 15-15 gets them in. It might, but it might not.
Rune, speaking of the West, I was going to ask you, Grand Canyon, the Lopes are up to 26 in the RPI, swept Texas Tech at home in a midweek series. I've got a lot of questions about them in the chat. What's your feeling on those guys? You think they're for real?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good program, right? Like they're just used to winning, and they popped a regional last year. They went to the final game of the WAC finals 2 years ago, or I guess that was 2019 before the pandemic. Andy Stankiewicz has got a really good coaching staff. Greg Wallace, John Wente. They've got a star player in Jacob Wilson. Like if Jacob Wilson wasn't so happy let me say it this way: if Jacob Wilson was in the transfer portal, he'd have a full scholarship anywhere he wanted to go. Now, I don't think that's going to happen because he's a West Coast kid and it's trending great for him. But, Grand Canyon plays very good defense. They're good. They've got good athletes and they pitch. So, and they've been in a regional. So I think they're very viable. They're a very interesting team to me. Kara, let me return the favor. Give us a Big 12 update. That Texas still very intriguing to me.
Yeah, I might be turning my attention more to Texas Tech and Oklahoma State right now. I just think when you look at Texas, there's a couple of warning signs for me. There's no doubt that they're really, really offensive team. I know Ivan Melendez didn't have a great weekend against TCU until the final game when he hit that home run. It was a little bit wind-aided, but it was good to see him kind of finish the weekend on a high note. But I think when you look at Texas overall, Aaron Nixon was lifted pretty quickly. He had like one good batter, and then the next batter it was just a total mess. They took him out of the game, so he's still not right. Lucas Gordon threw really well against TCU, but he's kind of been up and down. And so I think as long as your closer and your number 3 starting, your number 3 starter is kind of up and down, to me that's a little bit of a warning sign if I'm expecting you to get to Omaha. I just think right now, Oklahoma State starting to get healthier. Griffin Dorsey was back in the lineup against Oklahoma over the weekend. You talk about teams kind of scratching and clawing. I mean, they were pretty much done in that second game against Oklahoma. Oklahoma looks like they're going to win the series. All of a sudden, Oklahoma State rallies. What happens the next day? They dominate OU in that rivalry game to win that series. So I'm liking what I see from Oklahoma State. And then you look at Texas Tech. I mean, Andrew Morris, we talked so much about Brandon Birdsell, but Andrew Morris, a guy that kind of coming into the season, we didn't expect to be a bona fide, really good Saturday starter. He's been really good for them. So, yeah, there's still a question mark over the number 3 spot, but like you can look at Texas Tech and go, okay, I feel pretty good about Birdsell and Morris at this point, and we all know they can hit at this point. So I think for me, I'm starting to like Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, and then Texas a little bit after that. Of course, the Horns have Oklahoma State at home, and so they could very easily win that series. But my confidence meter on Texas is a little less than it was, and I think TCU, since I saw them over the weekend, some very brief thoughts on TCU. Braden Taylor, really good. Tommy Sacco, guys, was unbelievable. I don't think he had an out the final 2 games of that series. He was excellent defensively. He's been terrific for the Frogs. I think the biggest question mark for me when I look at TCU is, outside of Riley Cornelio on Friday, the Saturday role continues to be a problem. And Kirk Sarloos kind of noted that over the weekend. And so until they figure that out, whether it's Marcelo Perez or Cam Brown, they're going to have some warning signs as well. You just can't navigate that tough of a league, with your Saturday starter struggling. And I guess the last team for me, keep an eye on West Virginia. They continue to play at a very high level. They took a series on the road against TCU. They took a series from, Baylor, swept them over the weekend. And, oh, by the way, they get Oklahoma State out in Morgantown this weekend. Assuming there's good weather, I'm going to go ahead and assume that place will be packed.
KR, I don't know if you remember this, but me and Fitzy took notice of West Virginia last year. We were maybe a little early to the party, Fitzy, but they're backing us up.
They're just a year late. They're just a year late.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. We weren't a year early. They were a year late.
This is a win for us, Runes.
It is a win.
This does not count as a win for you.
Yes, that is a win.
Does Wake count as a win for you this year?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Game.
We were all over that. We were the first on board. The Wake.
We got them at a price. West Virginia and Wake. I mean, that is
the Wake. Hey, what I'm happy about is the Wake fans. I didn't realize there were Wake fans on Twitter, but the Wake fans have come out of the woodwork to get really mad at us for not having them ranked. Tell you what, Wake fans, if you win the series this weekend, you'll be ranked.
There's no question. And that's right. They've been at the edge of the rankings for a while now.
Yeah.
And, the only issue is, we look at quality series wins, and for them, they have the one at Georgia Tech, and that's it. It's the only series win they have against anything that's really close to being a regional team. I mean, good for you. You take care of business against BC and Duke, but those 2 teams are combined 6-24 in the league. So that's just not going to move the needle. But Wake has been, largely pretty good. I mean, even the series losses they've had, they didn't get swept by Virginia, and they didn't get swept by Florida State. And so they're right there. They're right there they're in a great spot for postseason positioning, which is far more important than the top 25.
Yeah, 14 in the RPI.
14 in the RPI, not 9-6 in the ACC. They're really cruising toward regionals right now if they could keep it going.
Yeah, it feels like spots, I don't know, like I'm just going to pick a random number, like 17 through 40 when we're trying to rank these teams is kind of a food fight. Like it's hard to declare a winner. It's so messy. And, like Wake, one of their big data points, your point, Fitzy, was, hey, they went 4-5 against Georgia Tech, Virginia, and Florida State. And, hey, like most teams will take 4 wins with a 9-game gauntlet like that. But is it enough to get you ranked? I don't know. Like and Santa Barbara we talked about a lot too, right? Where they haven't lost a weekend series yet, but they don't have a weekend series that gets you, doing jumping jacks either. So yeah, there's just you continue to win games, and then it'll be fine. And like you said, the postseason way more important. Hey, let me do this, guys. Let's wrap with this, and you guys can pick a league that we haven't talked about. I want to just touch on the Big Ten real quick. Me and Coach Farron, the great Mike Farron, got to talk to Steve Owens today. Really fascinating. I mean, just incredible. Not shocking at all what he's doing at Rutgers, but also shocking, right? Like, I know that's a dumb statement, but like Rutgers has been nowhere near the top of the Big Ten standings ever in baseball. They were good in the Big East, but anyway, really fun to talk about. But Steve Owens is just almost like a college baseball savant. They've got the two guys at the front of the rotation, Nathan Florence, who's a transfer from Hartford, 6th-year guy. And then Jared Kolar is a transfer from Seton Hill, 5th-year guy. And again, pitchability, they're veteran strike throwers, don't get rattled. And they've got this really physical offense. But the name that I wanted to just share, Ryan Lasko, the more I've heard about him is really exciting. And this is not the comp I'm making, but he's kind of like a poor man's Mike Trout. What I mean by that is 5'11"-ish, really physical, like he's football physical, but as Steve Owens described him, really twitchy, big
he's
arm.
From Jersey, right?
He is a Jersey. And he was kind of like the first accomplished Jersey kid that they kept that didn't end up in the ACC or at Vandy or something like that.
So I would argue Rutgers, I actually think that's an intriguing place. And I get it, from a facility standpoint, I'm guessing they probably need to do a lot of work there. But to me, if Connecticut being a big state school, and granted, they have an excellent coaching staff with Jim and Josh McDonald and those guys. But if a big state school like Connecticut can win on a consistent level, I would think that Rutgers, being outside of New York City, being able to go down the upper mid-Atlantic, being able to go into Western PA and places like that, there's no reason why Rutgers shouldn't win too.
Very good baseball state. I agree, KR.
They always have. I mean, really, it's a really good baseball state. I mean, if you look at North Carolina's roster over the years and Virginia's roster over the years, there's a lot of Jersey kids. I mean, the Clemson too. I mean, there's a lot of good talent in that state that just tends to go south. And if they can keep some of those guys like Lasko, that's absolutely a difference maker.
Yep. How about boys? Any other leagues that we haven't talked about that you'd like to bring up before we wrap?
Hey, the Sun Belt, Runes. The Sun Belt's really interesting. I think Aaron's going to write about either Georgia Southern or Georgia State later in the week. But Brad Strombaugh at Georgia State, it's kind of really interesting. When I just do my Sun Belt preview, I was kind of hitting him up with a little more intel on some guys, and he said, "Hey, I get it. People are going to rank us really low, but he's like, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I think we're a top 3 or 4 team in this league." I've never been around a team this good. And it's kind of funny, some coaches will say that, but he was dead set. There's no doubt this team's a top 3 or 4 team in the league. And so far they've played like it. I mean, they've got legitimate talent. They've got some prospects. They're 10-2 in that league. Georgia Southern, they go on the road. I mean, they almost swept Texas State, who was previously number 10 in our rankings. So Georgia Southern's trending up. Remember, they got kind of knocked around a little bit by Tennessee opening weekend. But since that point, they've been pretty good. And then, the Bobcats are still in good shape at Texas State. And then you got Troy with Skylar Meade in this first season. They're 8-4 in the Sun Belt. And I would also say South Al and Louisiana. Both those teams kind of been a little bit up and down. Both those teams certainly have enough talent. So, you're talking about a league right now that six teams deep. I feel like it can be in the position to win that regular season crown.
Yeah. Did Georgia State get off to a slow start or something? I feel like they are a late bloomer, but it is interesting. Didn't you guys feel like this was going to be the Sun Belt when Coastal came in? That you're like, oh, it's going to be automatic 2-3 bids a year, and that just hasn't materialized. But they're kind of sneaking up and stealing Conference USA's lunch a little bit. They, the American, they might be stealing some bids. This is it's a great bring up, KR.
Well, and they get Southern Miss next year.
And Charlotte, I think, and maybe some others.
James Madison. I think they get James Madison as well. Not that really matters, but
hey, JMU's had some moments in baseball. I think that's a good. Virginia's a good baseball state. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's that league is fascinating. I agree. And it does feel like, this is an opportunity. This is kind of their year, especially with Conference USA having RPI problems, as we noted in the Nerdcast. This could be a 3, maybe 4 bid league. I mean, CUSA got 4 last year. Maybe the Sun Belt gets 4 this year. I wanted to talk about. I've lost my train of thought. The American.
I thought you were about to say the Metro Atlantic.
The MAC. Tulane. We've got some Tulane love here in the chat. I've noticed. Tulane does have a pretty neat resume. They're 5-1 league, tied with UCF. Both those teams right now feel like the top of that heap. Although with ECU right there, 4-2. I mean, you're never going to overlook East Carolina, but. Tulane's got some nice series. I mean, with the Mississippi State, I know Mississippi State has struggled, but with the Mississippi State series win, 2 out of 3 at Louisiana Tech, and now you start conference play, win your first 2 series, including South Florida this weekend. I kind of like their resume. For me, they're not that far out of the top 25. I wrote about them earlier this year. I think they're an interesting team. It's just a matter of will the young pitching hold up? And so far it has. They've done a good job there. But UCF too. It feels like every year they're just right there, in the hunt, and we know they have talent on that roster too. So, I still think this league's a total free for all, with Houston and Cincinnati, Wichita, South Florida. We're 2 weeks in, and it looks like there's some separation, but I think they're going to all jostle back and forth all year long.
Hey, by the way, Kendall, you brought up Georgia State, and it brought me to Florida's resume. I'm going to give you guys some resume wins, some weekend wins for Florida. So, their weekend loss to Liberty. Liberty's rebounding and, had a huge weekend sweeping FGCU. So Florida has got a sweep of Georgia State, a series win at Miami, a series win at Alabama, which looks awesome, and a series win over Arkansas. That's go ahead and you can get your bid ready, right? Like that's a hosting resume. Even though they're under 500. Yeah, they're under 500 in the SEC.
They've got one. Yeah, they've got one less win against top 50 RPI teams than Tennessee does.
Oh, that's fascinating. Hey, boys, by the way, let's wrap on Tennessee. That's the perfect way to wrap. So they're 31-1. Tony Vitello, I heard him interviewed after the series. Missouri played them hard. That was maybe one of the more stressful weekends that Tennessee has had. But I had this thought when I was driving today. Dave Serrano, who I think of as an outstanding college baseball coach. When we look back on Dave Serrano's resume, this guy's got a national championship ring as the pitching coach at Cal State Fullerton. He took two different programs, UC Irvine and Cal State Fullerton, to Omaha as a head coach. The number of coaches that have taken two different programs to Omaha, that's a very, very small party. And then Dave Serrano goes to Tennessee, and it just, really struggles. They don't go to a regional from 2005 to 2018. That's a huge gap in a league like the SEC where you're getting 8 teams in automatically almost. And now Tony Vitello has been there. Was 18 TV's first year or 19 was?
18 was his first year. 19 was their first regional.
First regional. Right. Got it. And now, in that short a time, this program from 2005 to 2019 couldn't do anything right. And I would argue that I don't even know if Tennessee ever got onto the bubble in that 14-year stretch. I don't ever remember them being last 4 out, right? No. And now they're 31-1, and they just broke a record in the SEC. It makes sense, but nobody's ever started 12-0 in the SEC. This is lunacy, what's going on in Tennessee.
It is lunacy, especially since it's not like it's been a cupcake, walk through the league so far. They did have to go 2 Ole Miss and 2 Vandy back-to-back weekends and just swept them both. But it's sheer lunacy. That's the word. And I had a great nugget too on this, Runes. Apparently, so during this this stretch, this 23-game winning streak, I think they've got, they had led at the end of 198 of the last 200 innings. Okay. And they never trailed at the end of an inning during the first 20 games of the streak.
It's insanity.
I can't wrap my mind around that.
Yeah. It's just been utter dominance. And again, they made Vanderbilt, I'm like some of these SEC teams, I'm sticking with that analogy. They've kind of looked like zombies, like the Ole Misses, Mississippi States, the Vandys. They just look lost and uncomfortable. And for some of these teams, Tennessee has had something to do with that. I feel like Tennessee put a sleeper hold on some of these teams, and they can't wake up. It's crazy. I don't know. Maybe it's the Drew Gilbert effect. Kendall, bar fight meter, Drew Gilbert, is that the standard?
I guess so this is going to sound bad. I love Drew Gilbert on the field, but I'm kind of wondering if he's that way in a bar fight.
It's a good point.
I'm kind of wondering if he's I think I'm more of a Luke Lipsius guy in a bar fight.
Yeah.
I feel like Luke is just I feel like that's just kind of who he is. Yeah. Did you see over the weekend? And I get it. People are gonna hate it. People are gonna think it's pompous. But did you see over the weekend where Luke Lipsius comes around third to score, and he slid past home, and he was obviously gonna score. So he went up to home plate with his pinky and just goes.
Yeah, it's just vintage, absolutely vintage. It's funny you said that, Kendall. I heard Drew Gilbert interviewed with a fan. It was kind of like a phone video that showed up on Twitter. He was very sharp and well, like
yeah, I don't think he's really. I don't think he is who he looks like on the field. But by the way, when David Seifert's updated prospect rankings come out on Wednesday, Drew Gilbert's going to be much higher than he was in our previous ranking.
Yeah, like bar fight meter's the wrong phrase. He's Mr. Helium right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, he's got to be an all fit guy, right?
He's short.
5'9".
He's short, which helps his cause.
That's right. Where he's just going to stop there.
That's right. Oh, that's awesome. Gentlemen, very good. Happy Monday. That was fun. Hey, for everyone listening, first of all, if you're on the Facebook channel, please subscribe. That's huge. We appreciate you helping us get to 1,000 subscribers there. Also, the weekend preview, this is Easter week, so the weekend preview this week will be Wednesday night. I'm back, baby. Move over, Ludenberg Little League. Newtown Edgemont is back, baby. Although we're pro Lufkin Little League or Lufkin whatever. Or Ludenberg,
Hey, by the way, I think I'm climbing up the standings in the pick'em. I feel like I had a really good week.
Oh, I had an awesome. I think I was 8-2. Fitzy, how'd you do? Do you remember?
Whatever. Who cares?
That doesn't sound like 8-2.
I don't even look at the standings until the end.
I look at.
By the way, I was going to mention this stat too. You talked about Tennessee. I think I saw last night on LSU's Twitter feed that they have not lost a series in Starkville since 2003.
That LSU
That's
has
like
not?
Mind blowing. LSU has not lost a series in Starkville since 2003.
Wow. Yeah, that doesn't. Although here's the truth, guys. Like Mississippi State was, I felt like under John Cohen, they were kind of like rebuilding. Maybe that's the wrong phrase, but under John Cohen, they were kind of building the program back to a really great place. There had been some transitions there, and then 2013, it kind of, there's a pinnacle there where they're in the finals, and then they had a really dip. I mean, they missed the SEC tournament. I want to say 2015 or 17, and then there's this crazy run of 3 straight Omahas.
Well, I mean, I remember going to Starkville. Remember they went to the World Series in 2007, and then they dropped off fast. After Coach Polk, I guess, retired, and they just kind of they went through a rough patch. I remember going to Starkville during those years, 08 or 09 or something, and it was just like tumbleweeds rolling through, and it was like not at all the atmosphere that it is today, and it's crazy to think about that. But you're right. I mean, they went through some lean years there, and then of course, they just kind of really caught fire as a program in the last 7 years, but it's not been like a sustained thing over the last 20.
Them in Arkansas had a very similar blip where if Jonathan Simmons, if I'm reading his note in the thread over there, so 2015 Mississippi State's misses the Hoover, and then the next year they're hosting a super regional. They win the SEC regular season title, and I feel like Arkansas did something similar where 2016 when Blaine Knight and Isaiah Campbell are freshmen, they just got their teeth kicked in. 2017 Arkansas is really, really good. They're hosting a regional. I think they got upset by Missouri State that year. But long story short, then both teams are just rocket ship to the moon and in Omaha every year. It feels like.
Yeah, am I the only person that feels like LSU is like the poster boy for the college baseball season? Like one weekend it's like rah rah, the next weekend it's like what in the hell's going on?
Yeah, and it's
outside of Tennessee.
Yeah, and they're better on the road than they are at home, which makes no sense. Yeah, I think that's fair, Kendall. It's like it's been chaotic. It really has. I mean, it's been fun. Yeah, I don't know what to make. I was going to ask you guys this question, but I chose not to because I didn't have a good answer. But I was thinking this thought today. I was thinking, how many of the top 8 seeds this year are going to get to Omaha? And there's been years where it was 3. There's been years where it's 7. But I don't know. It feels, the postseason feels like I feel like no one's beating Tennessee at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. I don't see that happening. Of course, anything can happen, but I don't think that can happen. Everything else, I mean, again, with my own eyes, I watched Boston College put a 9 spot on Carson Palmquist at Marklight Stadium. So I don't know. I can't unsee that. So,
well, you know what's going to happen is Knoxville's going to be paired with Dallas. Vandy's going to go to Dallas as a 2 seed, win the regional, and then Vandy's going to beat Tennessee in the super regional.
oh my gosh, yep, that mouthpiece is in. Football helmets. They'll have to hand out football helmets at the front at the gate.
I'm kidding, by the way. So fans, don't take that seriously.
That's at Kendall Rogers on Twitter. DMs
totally just totally throwing it out there and not saying it's going to happen.
Yes. And any fans that want to go back and look at my 8-2, my incredible picks from last week when I went 8-2, feel free. Enjoy. It's on all the social media accounts. I will be going back and looking. So, gentlemen, well done. Very good. I want to say thanks again to our friends at S2 Cognition. Want to say thanks to Lunenburg Little League, Newtown Edgemont Little League, Lufkin Recreational League. It's all good. We will catch you guys Wednesday night. Have a great week.